Hey, everybody, welcome back to another Pathfinder Friday. I'm James Jacobs. I'm the creative director for Pathfinder, and
I'm Luis Loza. I'm a developer working on the Lost Omens lines.
we thought today would be fun to go over some of the top 10 changes we're most excited about
Yeah.
with the new edition. Obviously, the rules have changed significantly,
hmm
but one of the things we really wanted to do for the world of Galarian was to have it kind of be an invisible transition over. If you're in world, you wouldn't know if you're a fighter on the day before and the day after. You'd still be a fighter.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
the way the rules play it all out might be different, but
hmm
you wouldn't really notice it. But it also gave us a chance to move things forward and kind of a world. It's a living world. Things should change. Things should adjust. As somebody who's the ruler of a nation shouldn't be the same ruler for forever.
Or at the very least, they should age.
Yeah, they should like, get a little bit more
Yeah.
bitter and cranky
Yep.
and get off my lawn. So an addition change is a great chance for us to do that. So we just got a bunch of pictures that we're going to show off and talk about our favorite changes. And then after, if we finish that up in time, we'll have a chance to answer questions and see what else people out there are really interested about, what they like about the changes.
Sounds good. I think we could start with our first bit of our number one on our list, which is in no particular order. It's just going through 10 different things here. And the first is we get a chance to finally look at the world map properly in second edition. There was a kind of tease of a world map way long ago with the Inner Sea World Guide, which stated it was not to scale, so we didn't have to lock down things just then. But I think it's been 10 years and we have a good chance to finally settle in on this is what the world properly looks like.
Yeah, we can not only know like where all of the major forests and major, mountains and deserts and swamplands and all that stuff lives. It makes it a lot easier for us to take a map with this much detail and then just grab a region, say Vudra, and like zoom in and explore it a lot more. It makes it a lot easier for us to start going onto these other regions of the world and do stuff with them rather than have to start from scratch. So
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it also encourages us to go check out the rest of the world a bit more. Having the map locked in is already just kind of gets the wheels turning of the imagination. Oh, what could that be? Why is this like that? And also kind of puts a fire under our butts to say, hey, let's finally go there. We have the map. We have less of an excuse to ignore some of these other places.
Absolutely.
So I'm looking forward to, hopefully here and there getting a chance to poke out just a bit beyond the Inner Sea region when we get a chance.
Yeah. So that's really the big thing that we wanted to get out there right away. We've got that map showing up in the core rulebook. We'll be doing more stuff with the world and beyond and all of that stuff as the years roll on. I think at a faster pace than we got to other continents in first edition for sure. So our next image coming up is a kind of a skyline of the city of Kintargo. One of the things that we've decided to do when we updated editions is we wanted to kind of take all of the adventure paths we'd done in first edition and kind of say, these events have happened, their repercussions have changed and made the world a better place or a worse place. It's a living world. And with the Hell's Rebels adventure path, we had a plucky group of characters stand up against the man and take out those Thrunies and kick them to the curb. And as a result, the nation of Ravenel is a new nation in the setting. And Kintargo is its capital, the so-called Silver City. They've got a lot of silver trade, and it's where the Silver Ravens are based. And silver is a powerful weapon against devils. And so it's a lot of like symbolism there. And that's one of the things that I was really at first excited to do is to have Ravenel be sort of a bastion for chaotic good type characters. There's a lot of places for lawful good people to live. There's a lot of good places for like evil people to do their thing. But I really wanted more like kind of freewheeling type characters.
And not only is Ravenel new, but we have two other 2-3 other new regions in the world. The borders have shifted a lot in the last 10 years, especially with how much dramatic adventuring has been going around, shifting things around. So we have just north of Erissia, the new nation of New Thassalon.
Yep.
That is now a thing. We have down south in the Mwangi Expanse, or near the Mwangi Expanse, the nation of Sargava has changed. Power has shifted in Sargava, and it's now been reborn as Vidrian. And I think we have one other. We have the Hobgoblin Nation that recently rose up, the nation of Oprak, which is in the Eye of Dread region, as we call it in the Inner Sea World Guide. But not everything was for the good.
We really didn't want to. A lot of times when a game changes editions, they kind of like have these world-shaking events that destroy everything and all of that. And we really didn't want to do that. We're really proud of our what we built with the Inner Sea region and Galarian as a whole, but that we couldn't do it without wrecking at least one thing.
Yeah. If we look at our next slide, we can see the remnants of a region once known as Lastwall, which is now kind of gone.
Not really the place where the paladins go to sip tea and comment on, oh, what a lovely day for a joust. Shall we tilt at the... Anyway,
Yeah, not at all. So Lastwall, unfortunately, failed.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's a bit of a spoiler, but the Whispering Tyrant, Tarbafon, has broken free, and with him there are several hundreds and hundreds of thousands of undead that form his armies. And fortunately, Lastwall is now known as the Gravelands, a place where undead kind of roam free. And if you are a paladin, you maybe finally have a chance to stop sitting around sipping your tea and get up and fight something. So the Gravelands is a brand new region, the fifth of the new areas, but this one is not just a hey things turned out great at the end of an AP. No, it turns out there's still evil going around and bad things are still happening.
Yeah, that's one thing that we saw some people comment early on when we first started talking about the changes, like, well, is there anywhere to adventure anymore? Because everything seems so happy and nice. Oh, not really. It's as long as we're going to be in charge, we're still going to be awful to your player characters.
We just can't stand to live in a world where you can't go on adventure.
So coming up next, we've got this one is
this is a fun piece that we haven't really shown off here. So this is kind of our best view of the Isle of Kortos. This is kind of showing off just a kind of a bird's eye view of the island, and you'll see where this picture comes from in a couple months in the Extinction Curse adventure path. But this is showing off the Isle of Kortos itself, which is a place that, though is been the center of the Inner Sea for a long time, it hasn't had as much focus as we would have loved to given it. So we're taking the time to, hey, we have a new edition. We want to show off Absalom and the surrounding region as much as we can. And, you know, we're taking the time to do so. We have a whole year of Absalom content coming up with 2 adventure paths set in the Isle of Kortos and in the city itself, plus an upcoming Lostomens book, which is all about the Absalom. So, you know, we want to show that, you know, we haven't forgotten some of our more notable regions and places, and still to talk about those.
It's one of the things that I kept kind of trying to remind people early on when we were talking about doing an entire year of stuff on the Isle of Kortos. It looks like a tiny little place. It's like, well, you go to Absalom and that's it, right? And not really. The island is about as big as like the Olympic Peninsula of Washington, or it's bigger than that even. And if there's a region that you can like go wander around in like Twilight with forks and all of that stuff and do vampires and werewolves, and also do like in Seattle, you can go do, I don't know, like that awesome movie with Sylvester Stallone and Antonio Banderas, Assassins. And then have like, you know, Swingers happen. Those are 3 very different movies that happen in the same area. We can certainly do the same thing with our adventure paths and content, which we will be doing. So, anyway, after we're done with that, we're going to have some swing into style. With new factions, new groups.
So, a part of what you mentioned earlier with Ravenel and Kintargo is that there wasn't a good spot for kind of just a showboating, having kind of fun type of adventure that just goes out for the sake of adventuring and getting treasure and getting renown. And one of the things we came up with was a new organization that kind of allows or encourages that kind of thing called the Firebrands, who are all about, well, like I just said, kind of showboating and grandstanding and just having grand adventures, while at the same time actually is kind of almost a front for a different set of group of people who are still Firebrands that are going around liberating people from tyrants, kind of like you did in Hell's Rebels. And it's kind of a mix of both aspects of that AP that have since grown into their own organization proper, that just you join up if you want to have fun, and you don't really have any strict requirements or anything like that. You don't have to go through any kind of confirmation or fight any kind of devil to earn your place. It's just all about having fun or doing good in the world where you see.
Or making money is another element too.
Making money.
That's one of the things that I really like about the Firebrands is it's a group that the Silver Ravens, who are, revolutionaries who just want to, kick the devil out of town and make the land a better place to live. But it can also include pirates from the shackles. People who just want to sail around the seas and have fun and see the sights and make a lot of money while they're doing it.
Yeah, or if you like the whole rebellion aspect of Hell's Rebels and you want to go around and stop all the other evil rulers in the world, you can say you're a Firebrand, keep your identity secret, and go on and keep fighting the good fight. Yep. But along with a new organization, we also still focus on some of our older organizations. If we look at our next slide here, you can see a shot from within the Magambia, which is a big magic school down in the Mwangi Expanse.
I have a question.
Yes.
There's a lot more than wizardry and druidic magic going on. There's something right in the middle. Could you explain what's going on there for the...
Well, it looks like there's a study group going on, and a fellow student is bringing a treat and snacks to keep the study session going. Oh, this student happens to look like a big spider. This is a creature called an Anati, which is an ancestry which is just south of the Mwangi Expanse, just south of where you see on the map, typically for the Inner Sea region. But they are kind of a shape-shifting group of people that can, their true forms are kind of this hybrid of spider and person, but they can use their shape-shifting abilities to take on the full spider state or look more like just a standard human. But the Magambia is one of those places where if you're here to learn, if you're here to do good, no one really cares what you look like. Right. No one, if you can see in the background, if you are a Null, which is typically someone that's, these are monsters that you fight typically. No, if you're a Null and you're willing to put in the work and do good here, then we'll accept you. So an Anati here is fully accepted and has no problem with being a study buddy.
One of my favorite things about this picture is that the idea of a Null and like a human just kind of hanging out and talking about what's the best way to cast Unseen Servant. That sort of thing is such a diversion from Gnolls. Are usually these slaving raiders and just awful creatures. You don't even notice the Gnoll here because it's that spider, which I think really carries through the Magambia's element. Is it's not about who you are. It's about the fact that you're here to, do cool magic.
Yeah, do cool magic. And the Magambia is a great place for... It's one of those organizations that we've had in place for a long time, but we haven't had a chance to really put the spotlight on them. And with second edition, it's one of the things we started doing right out the gate. Say, hey, the Magambia is great. Let's take a look at that and make sure that more players and more GMs are interested in this aspect of the world.
Yep. So after the Magambia, we're moving on to talking about just a wide range of diversities and different types of characters and all that. This is a pretty eclectic group.
Oh yes, absolutely. So one of the things that I had kind of an issue with, not issue, but kind of rubbed me the wrong way for a long time, is that if you were a human, you could then break it down to, are you a Varisian? Are you Taldan? Are you Kellid, or whatever the case might be? And then, if you say I'm a dwarf, that's kind of where things ended. Yeah. There was no further. You might say, I'm from here, or I'm from there, things like that. But we wanted to expand every ancestry to have kind of their own groups and ethnicities that they could then latch onto to give them more culture and more interesting wrinkles like that. So one thing we're doing now, which is with our Lostomens character guide, which is coming out in the coming weeks, is expanding all the ethnicities and ancestries for players here. So instead of just being a goblin, you could be one of the Frostfur goblins from up north, who has adapted to deal with the cold, and you have some fur to help you out there. Or you can be one of the Grundaskin dwarves, which is actually the dwarves who, hey, we completed the quest for Sky, great, we're done, let's go back home, let's stay down underground, and the underground dwarves as opposed to the surface dwarves that you're kind of used to seeing. So we got a chance to expand a lot of these, and it's really exciting because it just lets us flesh out the world a lot more and just get more interesting art and
by interesting art, that's I think key, because we've had these characters in our setting from the start, but they've always been like, there's like on a page we get 900 words, and we spend 800 words of those talking about, say, the elves, and then we spend 100 words talking about the Akuje elves and the Snowcaster elves and the Morton Spire elves and all these other things, and there's no gravity to them. And having all of this art in the upcoming Lost Omens character guide it inspires. Yeah, it's really cool.
So I hope that someday we'll get a chance to do this treatment with all of our other ancestries in the future. We just had the lizard folk, the Ruxi. We talk about them a bit in the character guide, but hopefully maybe someday if we get a chance to take a deeper dive on them, we'll say, here's all the different groups for the Aruxi and things like that. So it's something I'm excited to do again in the future.
What do we got coming up next? Let's see.
More ancestries.
Oh, yeah.
More fun buddies.
This one was one of the things that we are excited about doing with these switchover is it gives us a chance to start new, start afresh, to kind of rebrand, to use lovely corporate speak, the look of some of our monsters. We did it with Wayne's brilliant goblin design for the very, very, very first Pathfinder. We had the goblin pretty much locked in from the start, and a couple months later, we locked in the ogres, and so we've got those set up. But this allows us to go back to Wayne. And it's like, hey Wayne, we need to see what the new hobgoblin looks like. We need to see what the new lizard folk look like. And of course, here on the right here, we've got Wayne's new kobold. So it's this little kind of red scrapper guy with his spear, and he's like, I'm a kobold. I'm ready to take care of things. Yeah. And so the fact that kobolds we've already established they have different colors of scales, kind of depending upon their own ancestry. So each kobold has its own ancestry. But this kind of really, people in office have called them like dragon newts, and they're fun.
They're very more salamander-esque than they are like a dragon kind of style.
And part of that is like we want to try to make them look our own. Like Wizards of the Coast has their own look for them. Like Warcraft has a different look with the candle on top. And we really want our kobolds. If you look at a kobold from Pathfinder, we're going to say, oh, that guy's from Golarion. That guy's...
Yeah. And it's not just the kobolds that we've been doing. I mean, with like you mentioned, the hobgoblins and stuff like that. But it also... with the foresight of knowing that, hey, we had the second edition coming up. We had plenty of other opportunities. We're doing that with bugbears, I think.
Yeah, bugbears are looking pretty
good.
Some of them are still works in progress. Others are.
And we'll also, if we feel that we want to differentiate more of our ancestries down the line, with our APG ancestries, we might look at how are our catfolk going to look? How are our tieflings and stuff like that going to look? So it's always the fact that we're making Pathfinder more of our own rather than basing it off what came before means we get a chance to make it very distinct in its not just its setting but in its look and stuff like that.
The kobold, there's a quick question that just popped into the chat. Those are both kobolds. The difference is that they're kind of sort of dragon related, so they've got scale colors sort of based on the chromatic dragon, so red, white, green, black, blue. That don't really have much of a difference, except it does determine they have like really kind of piddly little energy resistances depending on their scale color. But we've been using a lot of the kobolds in our encounters. They kind of just all mix up together. What do we got next? We got this is something that I'm super excited about. A lot of the campaign setting is not a lot. A chunk of the campaign setting. We went too far. Back up! Yay! Are the deities, and with Gods and Magic coming out early next year. Not only are we going to represent all of the core 20 deities that people are familiar with, But we're going to also present, is it 20 of the other deities?
Yeah, I think it's 20 other deities plus all the other stuff we get to
plus
talk
all
about.
but all those 20 other ones all get full page entries with illustrations and everything, and it lets us explore a lot of deities that are, either new to the setting, like in this page here, we got on the left, we got Cassandali and Nocticula, who are brand new deities who, through the course of adventure paths, have arisen from various lesser forms and have transcended to become new creatures entirely.
Or we have
then on the right side,
we have the likes of like Kazutal and Tsukio, and then in the middle there Gruhasa, who are deities that we've already established. We actually established them kind of earlier on, some of them earlier on, like with the Dragon Empire's Gazetteer, we mentioned Tsukio, but we haven't had a chance to really explore who they were before. We got a chance to do that a little bit near the tail end of first edition, but we wanted to have these in early on to say, hey, the inner sea region isn't just kind of a closed up box where nothing comes in and out. We want to show that, we have these deities from Vudra, from Arcadia, from Tianxia that have maybe started getting some influence in the inner sea region, or to even just say, don't forget the rest of the world still exists, and they have different ideas about their deities or their faith and things like that. So we wanted to both show off the new, but also the other stuff that just didn't have a spotlight on it early on.
We've done several versions of the God books before. We've done Inner Sea Gods. We did a first, even before Pathfinder Campaign, we had a version called Gods and Magic. One of the things that we chose to do in this one, in this second this second group of 20 deities, is we kind of skewed away from having the idea being like, let's focus mostly on a wide range of deities of all alignments. It skews pretty heavily toward non-evil deities.
Yeah, more stuff that the common player is going to be using.
There's certainly still a lot of bad guy deities in the setting, and we've got sections later in that book with on the elder mythos, on demon lords, and all that stuff. But none of the deities on this page here are, I think, none of them are evil. Going through this real quick, we've got, starting from the left, excuse me. On the far left is Cassandali, the goddess of like artificial intelligence and created life,
and androids.
Next over is Nocticula, who is the goddess of midnight and exiles and basically artistic freedom. Next over, that's
Gruhasa, who basically he wrote the big holy book that is really important in Vudra, and in turn became a deity, and is kind of the deity that represents this book and knowledge and enlightenment through knowledge. Next we have Tsukio, who is the god of the moon, and also god of healing. He helps if you read his story, there's a lot of information about how he suffers from mental illness or he deals with mental illness, and helps people to deal with that, and communities and stuff, and to better support the people who have that kind of stuff.
Deity that is like a positive light on that sort of situation, which is, I think, really, really important. And then last we got Adam's little creation.
Yes, it's Kazutal, who used to be a deity of war back in Arcadia, but suddenly Earthfall happens and her people need her help, and she starts shifting into a goddess of community and things like that. And she's still great at battle and things like that, but it's not just all at war, let's go destroy our neighbors. It's no, let's keep our people safe.
Yeah. And the interesting about that deity is that Adam Daigle basically made that up for a game I was running. It was like, I want to worship somebody from Arcadia. Can I make it up? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Well, she wears a jaguar. That sounds good. So it's pretty cool. Like there was a couple questions real quick back in the chat that popped up that are still pertinent. Like Nocticula, for example, in first edition was a demon. She was chaotic evil. The storyline that she followed through in first edition had her rise from that, and she's now chaotic neutral. She lives on Elysium in a new realm that is kind of a place where she welcomes people who have been exiled from other nations, places where artists may have been like persecuted, and they're free to do whatever they want. She's not necessarily good, but she's no longer really evil. And then there's another question real quick about why is the Lost Omens World Guide only half as thick as the Inner Sea World Guide? It's because we wanted to get these 3 books out really quickly, and we published more content in that second edition launch than ever before. Yeah. If we had done that book as big as the first edition Inner Sea World Guide, it would not be out yet. It would have to come out next year, and that was not that would have been a disservice to the setting. So we kind of split it up over 3 books.
Yeah, not only that, but a lot of what's in the Inner Sea World Guide still counts, still usable. It's not, we haven't changed the setting so dramatically that suddenly, what we said about Druma is no longer true. You have to buy this whole book to get exactly what's... No, if you want to use what's already in that book, you can, and then the Inner Sea World Guide helps you bring things up to speed with the changes in the timeline.
Yeah.
And, it's entirely possible that your version of the setting has changed at home, so we didn't want to immediately throw another 300-page book at you that says, this is how it has to be.
Yeah. Mark Moreland might throw a knife at me. I'm going to maybe spoil something. I'm writing a bunch of fiction for the blog about the deities that I'm pretty excited about, that brings in some of this ancient mythology and crazy stuff. Turns out, if you're thinking about, like, how did Pharasma start everything up and how did the world begin, and you've been sick and you drink like a bunch of NyQuil, that doesn't make you fall asleep. That makes you like go into sort of, visions. And that one's going to be an interesting story. Anyway,
man. I'm looking forward to that.
Next up, we've got, this is one of the things that has always been sort of a weird bugaboo for me in the game, is that a cleric should worship a deity. And in a way, clerics are like, cosplaying their deities, they're just super into the whole faith and everything. But there's also pantheons, and how clerics and pantheons interact has always been something that's really kind of been sort of kludgy and awkward in first edition. And in second edition, I was working with you, Luis, and I think we got a really, really kind of simple, elegant way for a cleric to basically worship a pantheon.
Yeah.
And the short version of it is you would still pick your deity of one of the ones of the pantheon. And
that's kind of your main,
that's kind of your focus.
Your focus deity,
and
patron, I think is.
You have to follow their anathemas or avoid their anathemas and follow their edicts. But then you also add on to that the anathemas and edicts of the pantheon as a whole. And it's a really, really simple, elegant way to solve that strange thing. And it lets you kind of, we've got 3 sample pantheons. There's not a lot of room for them, but there's 3 example ones coming up in Gods and Magic. But you can also do ones like, you can just say that Desna, Shelyn, and Serenray are a pantheon. We've got, they're canonically all involved with each other.
Yep.
And you could say that is like the pantheon of the Starlit Lovers or something like that. In a game that I just started up, set in kind of the southwestern coast of Ravenel, I'm running in. Now I've got a character who worships the Cosmic Caravan, which is sort of a pantheon of like Yog-Sothoth and Desna and Serenray and Grotus. And it's like you can whip a bunch of different deities that normally wouldn't have much to do with each other into a pantheon. And it's a really interesting area for us to explore.
And it also, I think, having mechanical support for something that I think would be very obvious in the setting. If you are a farmer, you probably pray to Serenray during the day and say, hey, I want your sunlight to get my plants growing, but you also pray to Aristil and say, hey, I want to make sure I have a good harvest. And you probably pray to Gozred and say, hey, give me the rains that we need to have a good harvest. And you'd probably not focus entirely on one deity for your entire life, or at the very least, you'd worship other deities and ask, pray to them and ask for their help here and there when it makes sense or is ideal to you. So not having that kind of support for something that probably happens left and right for the common person in the setting, it's about time, I think.
Yeah. And it helps to make the deities feel like they're not just self-contained characters that have no interaction with anyone else. So they all have like allies and enemies.
And some of them are even entire families. Like all the dwarven deities are just one big family. And it wouldn't make sense that, I only pray to Torag, but Torag's got 2 brothers and however many sons or whatever.
Well, it depends on the brothers sometimes.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, so is that the last one, or do we have something hidden right at the end? Or?
No, I think that's
that's it.
I mean,
so,
we made it around the world.
Around the world in 40 minutes, 30 minutes?
30 minutes.
30 minutes.
I mean, plenty of time.
If anybody's got questions, I don't know if Peyton, you've been harvesting?
Bit, I guess.
A little bit.
Yeah, we got several questions here.
Oh, okay. So these are sort of...
I think we had a few more in chat before we move on to these first about the... Gods and Magic. question here from Captain Ultra that says, Gods and Magic will still have a big table of the minor gods like Inner Sea Gods, right? Which is, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, big table is a good way to describe it.
The difference being that when Inner Sea Gods was published, there were fewer deities that had been expressed. Oh, these exist, and these exist, and these exist. Suddenly, I mean, it's not quite double, but there are still more deities that have been added into the setting since then, and it's a lot harder to trim that list down to something that's usable for everyone. So we're going to get lots of them, getting hundreds of deities into the list. It's probably not going to have every single deity, and it might miss your favorite deity or the one you wanted for your character, but
it sets a format so that we can cover them later.
Yeah, if we get a chance to do so again later, we can hopefully fill in the gaps. The other thing is that the nature of how the rules require information for deities now, with an edict and an anathema and your spells that you need and things like that, means that it was a bit tougher to fit them all in as easily like we did in first edition. So it just made it's tough, but we're trying to get in as many as we can for everyone. And every deity featured in the book that shows up in the pages of the book will have all the stats plus many more. Yeah.
Somebody just said goodbye, Sackhill Tormentors, and it's not a goodbye. We won't want to introduce the Sackhill Tormentors before we introduce Sackhills. Yeah. They haven't gone anywhere. They're still out there, so never fear. There's an interesting. So you still pick a single god for its benefits, talking about pantheons, but also get additional anathemas and edicts for the pantheon. Your example, the pantheon known as the God Claw, is a great example. So how would I be a cleric of Iomedae but worship, or a cleric of the God Claw and worship Iomedae?
So Iomedae has her edicts and anathemas, and you would follow those. If you kind of think of the champions code, where they have kind of a hierarchy where this is the most important thing. What it comes down to is Iomedae's edicts and anathemas are first and foremost the ones you have to follow. And then beyond that, the God Claw itself has additional edicts and anathemas. And any point where an edict or would cause a conflict with the God Claws and Iomedae's, you follow Iomedae's. So ideally, you still go around, fighting injustice as a cleric of Iomedae and stuff like that, but you wouldn't necessarily be doing the evil things that Asmodeus's aspect within the God Claw would require of you. So you have to work even harder to make sure you commit to it, but it opens up more benefits in the fact that you would then have a different list of domains and alternate domains available to you and stuff like that. So you trade off this versatility with the Pantheon by having to kind of commit to more rules and stricter role play that you have to go with for that.
It's pretty cool. Is there a power hierarchy among the gods? Is there central? So one of the things that we've got three categories of god. We've got quasi-deities, and quasi-deities are just things that happen to be able to grant spells to their worshippers, but they aren't necessarily that powerful. A quasi-deity could be up to 25th level, but you could have a level 0 quasi-deity. You just don't want to worship them, because if somebody steps on your god, you're out of luck. Yeah,
I mean, a lot of PCs could have ended up as quasi-deities.
Yeah, like the old mythic rules. Like
with the mythic rules.
Then the next step up would be demigods, which is all demigods are level 26 to 30. And so they're generally out of range of a party, but if you optimize your group and you get all the right stuff, you could maybe take out a demigod. Deities don't have rules. Deities do whatever they want. And as a result, it's really hard for us to list a hierarchy for something like that, because they can do whatever they want. There is sort of an implied hierarchy that some deities are more powerful than others. Like
Pharasma is probably pretty powerful.
But even Pharasma wasn't able, Grovagug had to be put away by a coalition of a lot of gods working together. So Grovagug's certainly super powerful. Caden, Kaelian, Iomedae, and Nagorbur just became gods in the cosmic scale of things, so they might not be that powerful. But if you're, a person, you meet Caden, Kaelian, or Rovagug, you're going to get crushed just as quickly if you make them angry. So
by not locking down the exact stats, one, you can't kill him as a player, but also as a GM, you are then free to say, no, you know what? Suddenly, Caden is actually very strong and can take Rovagug on his own. We just didn't have him around back in the day, and if you were there, it'd be great. Exactly. But for whatever story you need, the deity has whatever power you need for at that point.
Yeah. There was a Rusty Dragon question that is, back on the topic of like how things move forward. In Sandpoint, there's this tavern called the Rusty Dragon, and it's run in Rise of the Rune Lords by this woman, Amiko Kaijitsu. And later in another adventure path, semi-spoilers, in the Jade Region adventure path, it's revealed that she's the heir to the rule of Minkai. So she goes across the world and becomes the Empress of Minkai. She's no longer in charge of the Rusty Dragon. The new management at the Rusty Dragon, I would probably say is well, you'll see in the Sandpoint book, there's like sort of a nice little old lady halfling woman. Yeah. I think her name is Berthada or something like that. She's probably the one in charge of the Rusty Dragon at this point. Haven't really decided that specifically yet, but sometime. Yeah, it's probably her.
Or probably your players.
Yeah, if your player character's like made friends with Amiko, she might like have said, I'm heading off to become Empress. You guys want a tavern? Don't burn it down, please. Yeah. How can you worship Razmir?
You pay the right price, and you are allowed to worship his exalted glory, Razmir.
If you wanted to, you might want to take a lot of ranks in deception. Maybe pretend a little bit or here or there.
Or if you support Razmir enough, maybe he's a deity, right?
Yeah, sure, he's a deity.
I mean,
the Gods and Magic does have entries for stuff like this. Is Razmir in there, or is that one of the ones we did?
He has a little sidebar in Innersea World, or the Lostomens World Guide, excuse me.
But other things like the laws of mortality are in there, and the Shoanti, various Shoanti beliefs are in there, so there's different.
But again, we didn't have enough space to fit everything, so it just might, Razmir didn't make the cut.
Just worshiping something is not enough for you to turn them into a deity, though. So, if I wanted to worship Luis, I would get spells because he's already a god. But all right. So, what other questions do we got? Are there any books from Pathfinder First Edition that will not change that we can buy and not have to buy a new one for Pathfinder Second Edition? Pretty much the lore books are pretty solid. There may be little bits here and there, but if you're going to buy an entire book, like, for example, going back to Sandpoint, if you buy the Sandpoint book, it's a 96-page softcover book all about Sandpoint. That's got stats in there for first edition, so those you'll need to convert, but all the lore in there is still just as good today as it was when it was published in first edition.
And I mean, we don't know how soon we'll get back to anything. It doesn't matter where it was on first edition's timeline. We're doing Gods and Magic now, but that's because we wanted a Gods book. It just happened to be called Gods and Magic, but we may not go back to Sandpoint anytime soon in second edition, or we might go back to it, next year or something. I honestly don't know.
Next weekend.
Whenever it makes sense for us, and we have that passion to get that book out there, then I think we'll good. So grab whatever first edition book you want and use that material.
That's what we're doing right now. If I'm doing an adventure path for X that I can't reveal yet, I'm drawing upon information from a book that I helped write over 10 years ago, because that information is still workable, it's still viable. So it's good enough for us. So I don't know. Next one. How common are retired high-level adventurers or random old farmers who used to be level 16 sitting around in most villages? They are very, 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 very uncommon.
Rare, you could say.
Yeah, rare, I could say. Not quite unique. So if you look at the standard campaign, and that's your GM and players sitting around a table, that's the one that is legit for your group. And so think back how many characters you've had retire over the past several years. I mean, I've had maybe 5.
Yeah, and think how many more died.
Yeah, how many more died, exactly. So it's not something that really we hard code into the game. If we certainly have retired adventurers, going back to Amiko, she's in a retired adventure. She retired when she was 3rd level. So yeah, we don't really do a lot of, high level adventurers retire and then live in the backwoods, because we want your player characters to be the ones that solve adventures, not our cantankerous old player characters.
And I mean, there are times, like you said with Amiko, where they show up as NPCs. We had a smattering here and there, but I think being able to support PCs is a better role for them than they are to suddenly rise up and save the day in place of what a PC does.
All right, another question. Some nations in Lost Omens World Guide got new leaders, some did not. not all of them had adventure paths. How did you make the decisions on who got new leaders?
I think part of it was just looking at who is in a good spot to move on. Some of these leaders were pretty old when we said that when we mentioned them in the Inner Sea World Guide the first time around. And 10 years, I mean, that a lot can happen in 10 years. Some of them probably stepped down. Some of them probably have passed away. We just kind of looked through where we felt it was interesting to introduce, different leaders. Like we had a few different change-ups in the lands of the Linorm Kings. Some of them had different reasons for why they're no longer a Linorm King, but I think age played a big part into a lot of things.
Like plots that we might have for the future, like Magnamar is a city that I've done a lot with, and I've got sort of a couple of ideas that I might want to do sometime in the future, and one of them involves the previous Lord Mayor being mysteriously killed.
Yeah.
So that's a reason to replace him. There's another one, like in a couple of places that have like democracies and regular elections, people get voted out.
Yeah.
So it just makes sense.
It's kind of
a case by case.
Yeah, Andred has regular elections, and that's changed things. So where it makes sense, where we think it's more interesting to change things up, or some of these things may not have even been resolved in an AP, but they could have been resolved in other places like Pathfinder Society.
Yeah, that's true.
Or in our modules. So it's not the only place where things will change.
Has anything new happened in the Darklands in this setting update?
Oh yeah, probably.
Yeah, nothing outrageous yet, but there's certainly, we're going to be doing more stuff with the Darklands for sure.
And I'd love to take another dive, especially considering, I mean, the Darklands are essentially as big as the surface of Galarian, so that's basically a whole nother campaign setting in its own.
Any big developments in the non-Minkai parts of Tiancha since the last time the setting looked on it? Yeah, I mean, it's like 4 or 5 times bigger than the Inner Sea region. There's obviously new stuff going on there. We haven't done a lot of work yet on deciding, like, aside from Amiko becoming Empress of Minkai, and certain, repercussions like the Lantern Lodge forming in, I believe it's Goka, the Ruby Phoenix tournament and Haojin stuff going on. There's certainly some things going on. I'd like to have a kaiju start stomping around at some point pretty soon. I don't know where or when, but yeah.
All right. What is the status of Brevoy and the surrounding territories in 2nd edition, considering things might have changed by way of Kingmaker? That one we were a bit more coy about, a bit gun-shy about that. Rather than specifically say, here's what happened in Kingmaker and here are the results of it, if you check out the Lostomens World Guide, it kind of says there's a kind of big new kingdom there and some stuff has happened. We don't really nail down any of that. We don't want to invalidate what happened in your home game. My Kingmaker game is not at all what happened with anyone else's Kingmaker game. And if I decided, no, mine was the way, that, that's not very nice. Yeah. That's not very cool. Brevoy has had, if check out again the Lost Omens World Guide, had some shakeups where things looked like they were about to finally just kind of be nice and be good, and then suddenly someone goes missing and a wedding gets called off, and oh no, it just once again falls into chaos. So it's still kind of the same place that you're expecting in terms of like its themes, but we just kind of tweaked why things are there now as opposed to saying, oh, nothing changed for 10 years.
One of the things that's interesting about Brevoy is its original inspiration was the George Martin story, Game of Thrones and all that stuff. And when we first put it in there was not an HBO show, and that was like 3 books in or something like that. It was like 15 years ago or whatever it was. And now that inspiration is just one of the most overwhelming, dynamic pop culture fantasy stories out there. So it puts Brevoy in a weirdly different situation. So we'll do something with it again at some point. But
yeah, I mean, we're getting to work on so much of the setting myself. I suddenly get a lot more interest in what I just played in APs and stuff. So being a developer means like, oh, I kind of can steer the boat a bit and go to places that we maybe not had a chance to get as much written out there for it. But
where will I find info about the changes in Lastwall and Tarbathon?
I think the best place to look is in the Inner Sea World Guide. Or Lost Omens World Guide, excuse me. And that's not just for last fall, but pretty much anything in the Inner Sea region, go check out that book. Everything has a huge timeline that kind of explains what's been going on in the last 10 years. So any changes you're wanting to see, what happened in Cheliax, what's been happening in Varissia, check that book out, and we'll tell you what's the most up-to-date information there.
What's next? Assuming the year of the Stolen Storm happened in the Devault Galarian, which it did, what efforts are underway to free the 3 still trapped elemental lords of good? There are not really any efforts to restore those 3 going on in Galarian. We're not planning on doing any more stories with that. But that's not to say we're not letting them out. If you'll read the little sidebar in the bestiary, it talks about how those other deities have potentially been released already. Those deities are worshipped far beyond just on Galarian, and I kind of like the idea that that whole Pathfinder Society storyline happened and released one of these trapped elemental deities, and that's kind of like sets the ball rolling for starts that happening in other worlds and other areas and all that. So we don't really have any plans to follow up on that anytime soon, but if we do, it'll probably happen off screen, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and that's also one of those things where we don't have enough books coming out to cover every single plot hook we ever throw out there, because we want to let GMs do that on their own. We got to do one because it's a fun thing to do. We have these trapped elemental lords that have been trapped since forever, according to the setting, and getting to do that as players, specifically as part of organized play, is a great thing. But that still leaves the door open for GMs to say, okay, we had fun doing that at our local game store, doing the org play thing. Let's do the rest and get to come up with that. I just wish we had enough time to do every single plot hook, but that part of the fun is letting you do your own thing, and what we come up for things might not be as fun as what you end up coming up with for your home game.
Oh, here's a question for you, Luis.
Yes.
Will there be any support for clerics, champions, and other divine-styled characters that want to dedicate themselves to worshiping a philosophy, organization, pantheon?
Indeed, yes, there will be. We just talked about the pantheons
stuff,
in Gods and Magic, but Gods and Magic also covers the philosophies and some of the organizations in there. So if you are from Rahadum, you can be a follower of the laws of mortality and not follow any of the divine deities at all, or you can be someone that follows like the green faith, things like that, and it has the necessary things like edicts and anathemas and required alignments, things like that you would need to become a follower of these philosophies and things like that. Again, that doesn't cover every single philosophy we've ever mentioned, but it covers a good amount of the ones that have shown up regularly throughout Pathfinder's history, like Laws of Mortality and the Green Faith, and trying to like Sangpochi and like Shawanti animism is mentioned in there, things like that. So we want to encourage characters that are beyond the just I only worship the deities and things like that. It's a more interesting world that way.
Yeah. Anything new regarding Aasimars and Tieflings and other planar science? There will be more stuff about all sorts of planar science, like spread out all through next year for sure. It's not going to be a lot, but it's going to be kind of, yes, there will be new stuff. We can't really talk about it yet.
I mean, we've announced that with the Advanced Player's Guide next year, they are getting ancestry write-ups, so you can play as those. We don't know what those look like just yet, but we are covering Aasimars and Tieflings and
much more.
So lots of great stuff in there, including kobolds.
So. What else we got?
Let's see. Let's look in the chat. No.
Any chance atheist champions being a thing? So the weird thing about atheism is that the whole point of atheism is that you are, well, I don't want to get into a big kind of philosophical discussion.
Atheism within Galarian.
Atheism within Galarian is not compatible with divine magic. There are 3 other styles of magic: occultism, arcanism, and naturism, primalism. Those 3 things do work pretty well with various types of atheistic type build. It's really not an atheist champion doesn't really make sense to me. If you want to make an atheist character, you can make a really awesome atheist rogue or fighter, or I mean, we could in theory build an atheist champion archetype, but it would have to not only have rules that make it, you know, worth exploring, but it would also have to have lore that makes it makes sense logically in world. So
yeah.
There's a question. The Rivathun were one of the most original concepts introduced during first edition. Is there anything being planned with expanding this faction? There's stuff about the Rivathun in
they have a brief mention in the Lostomens World Guide, and they have
in the character guide. Yes, we're going to be doing certainly some more stuff with the Rivathun. Again, that goes back to Luis's comment that we have so much that we want to do, then we can't touch everything. Rivathun are super interesting to. In fact, the Rivathun are my favorite thing that we've done ever with dwarves, because dwarves have this weird sort of they're one of their defining features that people love about them is they're traditionalists. They're so steeped in traditionalism. They have this ancestry worship, and they're the best at making metal weapons because they've been doing it forever.
Yeah, and
that really makes it awkward and difficult to do new things with dwarves because that breaks tradition. And the idea, Crystal Fraser, I think, was a big proponent on building the Rivathun, and how these dwarves are still dwarves, but they are breaking traditions and making their new traditions. I think is brilliant. I think it's. I've long been the person on the board who's like, harumph, dwarves, awful. Rivathun is, if I were to make a dwarf, I mean, my first character for an RPG ever was a dwarf. And if I went back in time, they'd be Rivathun.
Yeah, cool.
Any option for characters to be part of the Iridian Fold or Noonan Fold? Not too much on the Iridian Fold yet. That's starting to get deep dive into organizations that either don't have a lot of information on them. The Iridian Fold is a group. Mostly, we've learned about them through Karamaga, but they have more of a role in other parts of the world, and it's not one that I'm personally super read up on. That was mostly James Sutter was doing a lot of stuff with that. If you guys want us to do stuff with groups or anything like that, let us know through the message boards or comments down below, and that's the big determiner in whether or not we want to do stuff. It's like people keep telling us to go to go to Galt. We'll get there eventually.
Yep.
Any plans for Tar-Baphon and Sorshan to get into it, or is he sensibly too scared to mess with her? I think he's probably. I don't think he's afraid of Sorshan, and I know Sorshan's not afraid of Tar-Baphon. They are doing different things on different parts of the planet. I mean, that's the type of thing where if we were to send NPCs to fight each other, that kind of takes the fun away from your PCs. Yeah. On top of that, Blood Mistress Jacqueline's probably the one that's going after Tar-Baphon first. So, that's kind of a spoiler. Yeah. Nothing. You'll see more about that later.
That's not to say that they're completely independent and don't influence each other's lives in any way. I mean, the armies of Tar-Baphon might start marching on eventually towards Berisia and Euthasalon, and suddenly Sorshan has to deal with that kind of thing. Or if someone is threatening the entire world and you live in the world, you at least have to pay attention and know what's going on. And Sorshan and Tar-Baphon are probably some of those characters that are high level and very intelligent and are at the very least aware of each other's existence, and we'll then start deciding, well, okay, maybe I don't march the armies past Belkzen because I don't want to get a Rune Lord or a second Rune Lord. Even. I don't want to get on their bad side.
Yeah, and to a certain extent, Tar-Baphon is what he is because he picked up a Rune Lord's toys and he stood on their shoulders. So he's a smart guy. He kind of maybe knows later. We've got probably a question for one more. There was one that was about... what was that, Peyton, that you scrolled off on our little prompter? Okay, there it is. Anything about Samsarins in the second edition pipeline? Samsarins are one of my favorite things that I worked on creating for the game. I just love the idea of an ancestry who is reincarnated instead of being born, and it just really fits into this the Tian Sha's like philosophy and inspiration. And every time we do something about Samsarins, we get a page to talk about it.
Yeah.
And that is not enough to go into the details of like the implications of what happens if your society has no babies, or it's a strange sort of system that, you can't make any assumptions about it. So I would love to do more about them. I would like to do that in a method that doesn't limit them to just one page of information, but I can't think of a way to do that.
I think I have an idea for that.
Oh,
so
hey.
one thing we get to do now with the world guides, as you see in the character guide coming out October 16th, is that we get to introduce ancestries. They don't have to be strictly into a core rule book. We have Fleshies and lizard folk and hobgoblins come in. So if we have a chance where it makes sense within a world guide, we can explore the mechanical ancestry that would be Samsarans, and we could also then talk about them in a setting. So if we were, for example, to get a chance to go back to Tian Sha, that would be the perfect time to then say, okay, here's Tian Sha, here's all the information on it, here's a cool Lost Omens book that covers a lot of it. Plus also, hey, here's a section for ancestries. If you miss Kitsune, here they are. If you miss Samsarans, if you miss Nagaji, and the Wayangs, they're all here, and we can talk about them where it makes sense, as opposed to just kind of saying they exist, but we don't have any context for them. Yeah. We want to make sure that they don't just kind of float around. There was a lot of races that showed up in the bestiaries that by the end of the first edition didn't get a chance to really get cemented anywhere into the world. So here's the Rougarou, but where do they live? We didn't get a chance to say. We didn't have time to say. But so instead of throwing stuff out there and then trying to contextualize later, if we get to do it all at once, it makes it a lot easier.
I'm going to sneak one final question. Somebody asked, the Jade Regent left Minkai in turmoil, sort of. Can we hope for a sequel? I just, having done a sequel to Rise of the Runelords with Return of the Runelords, that was a big lift. It was something that I had to plan ahead for a lot and from the start. So it's not something we'd idly just jump into. That said, I do sort of have a Jade Regent sort of sequel idea in my head. It has nothing to do with Minkai. It's more about you are a group of player characters who are in Sandpoint, and they just got word that the Empress of Minkai is coming back home to visit, and so you better make sure the town's picked up nice. So it's kind of like a get Sandpoint in shape for the Empress visit, and all sorts of shenanigans start going up there. So that's sort of a sequel to Jade Regent, but not really.
You want 6 adventures, right?
Yeah. Anyway, we're pushing up against the hour, so thank you everybody for all the questions. Thanks for stopping by to listen to us go on about the Lost Omens setting and what we love about it.
I think Peyton has a cool little thread on our message boards where you can go and toss your questions in for next time, and we can try to see those and hopefully answer them with our next Pathfinder Friday stream. I think we have coming up just in a few minutes Dragons and Things hosted on this very channel, but until next time, I guess. Thank you very much.
We do have sort of an idea of what's going on in a week, but I forget what it was. Have we announced that yet, or is that as I talk to Peyton off screen?
I think it is
exciting TV.
Off the top of my head.
Next week we're gonna
faction overview.
Factions. Oh, all right, there we go. Interesting. Yes. So, definitely come on back next Friday for Pathfinder Friday, and then stick around for Dragons Things. Yay, thanks, Luce.
Bye.